Welcome to DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, so let's get started. All right, welcome to another DFW Running Talk. I'm Chris Detzel, and today we have special guest Garrett Mayeaux. Garrett, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's funny because we just met. I think you mentioned that you're in the DFW running group. It's a Facebook group of 10,000 plus people, and you see some stuff every now and then. And you reached out and said, hey, you would want to help do some stuff. And come to find out, it's like you're an elite athlete, a triathlete, an elite. And I was like, so I did a little background. I was like, oh, this guy might be interesting to have on too. So I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know if you thought I was going to ask you to come on, but you seem to have a pretty cool background. And I thought, why not? So a guy that lives you're in Frisco, Texas, is that right?
Yeah, so I currently work in Frisco, Texas, but I live in Irving right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just right now, are you thinking about moving or?
Not for the sort of foreseeable future. I'm at least right now pretty settled in Irving for the time being. I'm like at a place in career with being the triathlete and pursuing it professionally that I don't know where that will lead. Maybe I'll still have this as a home base, but I might end up bouncing around. Or it might be that I stay here and really just go out for races travel-wise, but decide to stay and train here in the DFW and Irving area and Frisco area as well.
Cool. Now, tell me more about that, about being this triathlete that's doing this somewhat professionally, or say somewhat, just actually professionally. And let's dive into that. Like, I'm interested in your background. Like, how'd you get into it? How long have you been thinking about it, doing it, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so starting from where I'm at now. So last year I took my what they call professional license, which puts you into the elite categories. Typically, once you get into that category, you chase races that have bigger, better prize money. And so people that have the elite licenses, they're the only ones that are allowed to enter races and participate for the prize money if it is valued at $5,000 or more at a race. So say that you wanted to go and race in that race that has a $10,000 prize purse, you actually wouldn't be allowed to do that. And even if you went to the race and say you even podiumed, you got top 3, you would still not be allowed to receive the money. The guys that you even beat potentially time-wise on that same course, you wouldn't get the money and they would. And so that scenario actually happened to me when I was in college. I went to a race that had $5,000 in prize money, and me and one of my college teammates, I think we ended up placing technically second and third overall, but because we weren't elite card holders, we didn't get that $1,000 or whatever the second and third place was valued at. And so that was, I think, around the time when I started.
How would you know? Like, you would know that. I guess that's how you know, is go win a race or a podium.
Yeah,
nope,
you kind of find out. You're like, hey, there's prize money at this race, and there's pros here. And sometimes there used to be these smaller races that was like that one that I just mentioned. And now those are less frequent. They're a little bit harder to come by to have races that are just $5,000 prize purses. But I think I'm actually doing a race that has a $1,000 prize purse coming up at the very beginning of May. And it's a smaller race, but it's a race that's been a long-standing race. They've probably had that race for over 10, 20 years.
Which race is it?
It's called the White Lake Pro-Am. That's a race that's in White Lake, North Carolina. And
is it an Ironman or half Ironman? What's the race?
So it's technically a half Ironman distance, but it's not Ironman branded. So it's a half distance. So it'll be the 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike ride, and a half marathon at the end of the triathlon. But the triathlon itself isn't Ironman branded. So though it is the half distance, it's just called the White Lake Pro-Am half.
Okay. And then, and so looking at, I'm sure you've looked at the past runners that have been there or athletes, not runners. They're doing all kinds of swimming, cycling,
past
and running.
Triathletes.
Yeah, triathletes. Kind of looking at the past, do you feel like you have a good chance to podium or win?
I really do. So nowadays, the professional racing calendar is a bit more robust, and it starts to get really heavy with a lot of races going on starting in April, going throughout the rest of the year. And it's in a time period where it's close to a lot of other big races that are going on for the pros. So this year, I have a feeling that this race won't be it won't be really competitive. There's been years where this race has been really competitive, and the top athletes, a lot of people would know their names, like Trevor Fawley, Andrew Starkowitz, things like that. These are big guys in the triathlon area, and they've been past winners of the event and past podium athletes there. And there's been some years where it's been a little bit less competitive, some years it's been more competitive. I think this year's going to fall into a less competitive, and I'm actually leveraging that as like a stepping stone for my first season of racing this year. So I'm actually going to do an Olympic distance professional race it's called St. Anthony's, and that's going to be in St. Pete, Florida, the weekend before. And
Yeah.
then after that race, which is also a very long-standing, very competitive race, it has some of the biggest names in the sport that will go race there from time to time. And that will be very competitive this year still. So I'll go to that race, which will be a shorter distance, but very competitive race. And then I'll go to the half distance the next weekend, and it'll be a little bit less competitive of a race. But then after that, I'm going to go
Figure.
work my way up from kind of getting my toes wet. I've had some really good training to progressing through the season to more competitive races and hopefully maintaining getting really good places this year.
Yeah. What do you? Because I don't know, and I didn't do a lot of checking. I saw that you ran Cowtown, and I think you ran a 114 or something like that for the half. Is that right? I kind of wonder where are you within the elites, or do you feel like do you think you're one of the top, or is it you're getting there? How's that working out?
So right now, I would throw myself in the category of still being a rookie. There is a ranking system, so you can find a lot of information on professional triathletes to see, oh, how good are they and what are their race results. There's a couple of websites that keep track of these things and have really cool algorithms that they use to compare your swimming to other people, your biking to other people, your running to other people, and then your overall performances. They give you like a point system, and it's all based on all these like different tiers of races that you do, the competitiveness of the field, so they get a strength of field score and a lot of factors that get put into consideration. But that website is called the Professional Triathletes Organization, and then you can look up athlete ranks. And so right now, I think last time I looked, if anything hasn't changed, I was ranked 409th in the world, and that's out of about,
I
I
feel like you can do
think,
way better than that, dude.
oh yeah, I am definitely looking to
Joking.
climb the ranks.
For
They
sure.
score your top 3 races. So basically my top 3 races, and they kind of keep your top 3 as a running score, and then it gives you your positioning and the rankings. So my top 3 was from, I did 3 half Ironman professional races last year. That was in Maine, which was my first one, my first professional race coming back to professional racing. So little side story, I raced professionally very recreationally, I guess you could say. I was in school. I was not taking the sport super, super seriously. I was training around 10, maybe 12 hours a week. And for a triathlete, that's really not a lot. You're a household person that just wants to go do Luckily Irish sprint triathlon here in Dallas, or someone that's going to go do some half Ironman races. They'll train about that, working full-time jobs with kids, everything like
Yep.
that. So
That's
I was
tough.
in school training about that much, and I thought I was a hot shot. I was kicking everybody's butt locally, but I went to race the international competition, and
Get your
it was
ass
a
kicked.
brutal awakening. Yes,
Yeah.
I think I thought I was a really good swimmer. I came out of the water in the bottom 20 athletes out of 70. And so I had 50 people beat me out of the water, and I was like, wow. And then I just kept
50
losing
people out
places
of
as the race
70.
went on. And I was like, what is happening? So I raced for 2 or 3 races back from the time period of 2018 to 2020. And then I let my license go to focus on my professional career for a little bit. Didn't know if I really wanted to pursue triathlon, but then in the back of my mind, it was something that was still there. And then before I ran out of time to keep getting improvements, I decided to jump back into the sport seriously and taking it like full on this time and really give
And why
myself a
not if you
go.
can? I like that.
Yeah, I had myself set up in a good position to do it. I had some encouragement from people around me to pursue it. And so now I'm trying to slowly make the transition from a practice that I had built up to now becoming more full-time athlete. So I'm slowly working my way into that. But
Do you
yeah,
do
and
a lot of
so
half Ironmans or do you do full or what does that look like?
when you go professional, there are 2 routes you can take. You can either go what they call short course or long course. Long course is basically all the Ironman branded events, your half Ironman, full Ironman. Your short course
Branded.
is your sprint distance, your Olympic distance, which are races that are typically around an hour, a little under an hour to 2 hours long. And then you're usually chasing the Olympic pathway. That's how you pursue triathlon as a professional to go to the Olympics. It's based on a 4-year calendar there if you're pursuing that route. I've
Same
stepped
thing
away
with
from
running,
that.
right? Yeah.
Very similar to running, yeah. And then I'm pursuing long course professional triathlon, which is more like there's a lot of races. You go race, you build your name up, you build your brand up, and you just keep getting better and better as an athlete and hope that you keep moving up the ranks. So that's what I'm in the process of doing now is I'm trying to
Okay.
move my way up the ranks. Last year was just getting my feet wet. I was like, do I even want to do half Ironman distance? Because before that, I'd done 2 or 3 half Iron races just for fun at the end of a season of doing short course racing, and none of them had really gone that well for me. I usually would go into them and think, oh, I'm going to just hold back on everything. I'm just going to try to enjoy these races. And almost without fail. I would blow up on the run. Even if I tried to conserve energy on the bike, I would end up falling apart on the run. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to like doing this. Maybe I'm not built for doing this side of the sport. It's almost like runners that you might have someone that's a really good half marathon runner. They go to a marathon and they're like, I don't know what's happening. I can never do a good marathon.
Yeah.
So that's how I felt. I was like, I'm getting really good at short course, but it's a path that I don't want to continue pursuing. I want to move into the longer course now. But then I was like, I don't know if I'm an athlete built to take on anything past an Olympic distance because I was not doing very well. So last year I was like, let's race
It's just
professionally.
training probably is the key.
Yeah, and that's what I ended up finding because now that I'm doing more volume, I'm becoming definitely more resilient as an athlete. I'm definitely not falling apart on the runs after really long bike rides like I used to pretty frequently. So it's a big change in a little bit of your training style, but those things have been very important to my success now and that I am seeing in the future as being possible. So last year I did the 3 races, and the first one was, let's see if we can do one and do pretty well, train a little differently. And it didn't go very good because I lost all of my nutrition on the bike, which is super important in a triathlon.
You lost it.
So
Like it
yeah,
just,
like the first mile I hit a bump really hard. And on the bike, you're usually carrying your nutrition in water bottles. So I had, I think, 2 gels with me, but then the rest of my calories and electrolytes, they were all in a hydration system on the front end of the bike. And I hit this bump 1 mile in, going probably 20 miles an hour, and it broke the piece that holds this front end system on my bike. It completely snapped it. It came loose and I was holding it on with one hand. I had my thumb inside the bottle where you squeeze more water into it, essentially, if you end up doing that. And I was holding it. And I remember going past my fiance and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And it weighs like 3 pounds because it's got
yeah.
32 ounces of water and it's got electrolytes and, your carbs in there. It ended up, I was in this big long chain of guys where you want to be. It's considered the main pack in those longer distance races. And we took a turn that was real sharp and it had a little bit of rough stuff and I couldn't hold onto the bottle. So I went back to my bike and held onto the bike. And then that thing just launched off and I had a good 55 or so, 54 miles left in the race. And I was like, oh man, I'm in trouble now because that was a lot of stuff that you need to make sure you secure your fueling for the run.
Yeah, I was about to say you haven't even done the run yet.
Right. So as usual, I actually didn't bike very good there either. And then I didn't run very well. So I was like, man, another one that I'm just going to say that was a one-off. And so after
You have to
that,
chalk it up.
couple
Learn.
weeks later,
You're a rookie.
yeah, I was like, rookie mistake, simple things. There was more
You've done
things
this for a
that
long time, but
definitely,
you're still considered a rookie.
there were things that definitely still messed up before we even got to that point. But yeah, it was like rookie mistakes at that race, but it's really getting your feet back underneath you and getting back going. So a couple weeks later, I went to Michigan and did a race there at Fireman, Michigan, and I had my best race to date. I had the 10th fastest run split in a field of about 50 or so athletes. And considering that's 50 pro men having the top 10 fastest run splits, getting up there, you're getting where
I feel like
the
if you
sweet
can
spot of
really
what you want to
run
do.
really well, if you get the run right, if you got to get the swimming and cycling, and I could be wrong, but this is just me making shit up. But I feel like the run is the key to doing really well. Maybe at this level it's not. Maybe they're all really good. I don't know.
It can be. It used to be that if you had a really strong bike leg, that would solidify your place. All you had to do was run okay, but you didn't have to run that good. And then you just had to swim okay. But if you were what they called an Uber biker, your race was set. But nowadays, as more people are doing the sport's growing and there's more money getting invested in the sport, so there's more prize money available. So more people like me are seeing the sport as something, oh, I can build a career out of this and actually be a pro athlete and maybe make it to making pretty good money for the span of a career that you get. And so now more people are chasing it. There's a lot of people that are post-collegiate runners that come into the sport that have some sort of high school swimming background. So once they start training all that up and they learn how to throw a bike underneath their legs, they become really good athletes. And you've got more short course guys, which we used to love it. Short course guys would usually never step up. They would burn out during their short course career, or they'd have enough success that they didn't really want to move on up and do the longer distance things. But now we're seeing a lot of short course guys transition to long course, and they're dangerous athletes. They've got a really strong swim, bike, and run, whereas long course guys, typically they used to have 1 or 2 weaknesses. But now, like
There's
what
not
you were
many
saying,
weaknesses.
yeah, now
But the
there's
run
not
is
really
probably
many,
key.
not many really chinks in their armor anymore. So now running is more important. So if you're a good swimmer and biker, that's great. But if you don't have the running legs, you're easily going to drop down 10, 15 places, at least nowadays in these races and the way things are.
So it's funny because And I'm not even talking on the same level as you because several years ago I bought a bike and spent, for me, it was good money just on a bike that I never ride anymore. But because I got injured and I thought, let's try cycling. And I did. And I
Yeah.
did this like 60 mile, 70-mile thing 3 or 4 weeks after I bought the bike because I was in good shape, running shape, let's just say. So,
Yeah.
but I still did the 60 something miles, but I was pretty worn out just from that ride.
Yeah.
I think they call them rallies or something.
Okay.
And I realized like people with big legs and just were like they were way bigger than I am. I look
Oh
like I'm
yeah.
in shape, but these guys aren't in shape, but they're kicking my ass.
You'd be
Like
so
literally.
surprised.
I'm like,
Yeah.
how is this person like beating me? That doesn't happen in a run. You know what I mean? It just doesn't. But it does in cycling. Your legs have to just.
Yeah, what's interesting with cycling is oftentimes you will get better at cycling simply by, hey, go spend time in the saddle, go ride your bike. And that's all you really got to do. And you'll just start getting better and better. Whereas running is a little different. You can just go and run and you might not ever progress very much. You might see some improvements in your times. But if you just go ride your bike a ton, you'll just start getting better and better. And then I remember when I first started riding, having little to no bike riding experience, but I was a runner really pretty quick, I guess you could say. And I was a pretty good swimmer. But on the bike, I remember the first couple of group rides I would go to where I would see guys with beer belly looking
Yeah, exactly.
like, and they're older, like in their 60s and stuff. And
They're
they would
just
drop
killing
me
me.
like it was like they were barely breathing and I was dying. And so you'll be surprised to see on a bike that'll kick your butt. Or you have this mother of three that's maybe 110 pounds and she just passes you up like you're standing still. And it's impressive what people can do on a bike and the different people that can do well from just their training of riding bike.
Exactly. And I think that's anything is you've got to do the training. So you did well on the second race back. And so
Right.
you're happy with that. And then
Yes, I did
third
pretty well
race?
there. And then third race, I went to Indian Wells in December, and I was coming into that thinking I was going to do pretty well. And it was a little bit more competitive of a field, and it was a big field. I think we had 72 athletes in that race, and I finished 30th or 33rd, something like that. And I still had a pretty good race, but compared to the other athletes that were there, they were just so much better. But even though that was a good race for me at the time, there's still things that I looked at it and said, a lot of the numbers I was doing, I can do in training. And I raced that race a little bit different than I had other races where I was really in the mix at the beginning of the bike. I got into a really good bike group, but they were pushing really hard on the power for the first hour. So I had my personal best power numbers for the first hour and I was really stoked. I was like, wow, I'm doing great. And then came that second hour and it was tough, but I still ended up pushing really well. I had my best power average over the whole bike that I've had in any race ever. So there are a lot of like good check boxes from that race and I did okay, but still not great where I'm trying to get to. And so they took those 3 races and that's what got me into the ranking of 400 and something. But I think if I have some races, so say I break out this year from doing some really good training that I've been doing and start getting really good points on the board, then I can easily cut my places down and get into the top 200, which is what I'm going to try to do this year.
So interesting. So I have some questions that if you don't want to answer them, it's fine. But
No,
I'm,
that's
I'm
okay.
just me being curious than anything is you decided, hey, I'm going to do this professionally. And let's call it our pre-show before we got on. We talked a little bit about how do you make a living out of something like that? I know you mentioned you had maybe some sponsors and you have some jobs here and there because being an athlete like you are, like a triathlete, you've got a bike, swim, you got to do a lot of things and it's got to be expensive and somebody's got to be able to support that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, how do you do it? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
So
I don't know.
yeah, there's definitely with triathlon, it's become a very expensive sport, even from the bikes, which you mentioned before. And when you're racing professionally, you want to have a bike that can put you in a
Yeah.
position to be
Got to
competitive.
compete. Yeah.
If you have a $3,000, $4,000 bike, you're already minutes behind automatically just because of the bike technology being so much more advanced. So if you look at it this way, some of the things that I had to do was make a little bit of an investment in myself. So I bought a bike, which I did go through a bike shop that does support and sponsor me, and I got a
Okay.
really good bike, but I
Where's the bike
still,
shop? Do you want to
oh yeah,
tell us?
Endure Bikes, which is in
Okay.
Frisco.
Yep.
Been a longtime supporter of mine. It's actually where my office is too, which I'll get into. It's a piece of what supports me in doing triathlon. But yeah, Endure Bikes in Frisco, a great bike shop. They started carrying Trek, and a lot of riders started getting on Trek bikes. And so I was on a Giant, but having some issues with my position. So I said, okay, I think I need a bigger bike. I need to change some things up. So as I was getting ready to go back and really take pursuing professionally, professional racing seriously, I said, I need to have a top line, newer bike. So we looked at what I could get. So I got some of the lower components, the Shimano Ultegra components, but it's still electronic shifting. And there's a lot of things that I ended up changing on the bike as like aftermarket products. But I think I ended up dropping, if we look at numbers, around 8 grand on my bike
Yeah.
to get a bike that's a good level. And that's 8 grand on a bike that's probably around 14 when you look at it if it was outright retail.
Yeah. That's a
It
lot.
gets expensive. And then nutrition alone, like I've got a nutrition sponsor called Blank Sports Nutrition that treats me really great and takes care of me in a lot of ways with nutrition and things. But I ran out of some stuff and hadn't gotten an order in. And just for one day of training this past Saturday, I spent $13 on the nutrition that I needed for that one bike ride on one
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So things can get really expensive in the sport. And that's outside of your cost of traveling to races, your race entry fees, things like that.
Race entry fees are expensive to get into those.
Yeah, if you look at Ironman branded events, I think right now it's around 350 to 400 for a half, maybe, and then around 900, 800, 900, 1,000 for a full. And then as a pro, we have a little bit different entry pathways. So we get discounted. We can get an Ironman Pro membership, which is $1,500, and then we can sign up for whatever races we want to do during the year. But what they usually do with us is they tell us to do single event entries at a time, and you work your way up because say you get injured mid-season and you end up doing 2 races, but you already paid for the $1,500 membership, you're out a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
for me to do the halves that I want to do, each half marathon, or not half marathon, but each half Ironman race is $250 to enter.
Yeah. So that
But
means
yeah,
if you want to hit that 1,500 mark, that's
yeah,
several
it's a lot
races.
of races. So we have to go a long way before we start getting free races. But yeah, it's just the climate we're in is they're still paying for our
How many
races and
races do you
things.
want to do a year?
So some people do only a few. So you'll see some people release their schedules and they might only have 4 or 5 races. And those are usually the bigger guys that have a lot of sponsor backing and they're trying to train, peak at a race, train, peak at a race. And they're trying to really do the best they can and hope that everything goes well at every race. Otherwise, they start adding more to their schedule. But the way my race schedule looks like for this year, of course, last year I only did 3. I had 4 planned, but 1 got canceled due to inclement weather. But this year I'm actually looking at doing 4 races in my first season. So my first season will be between the end of April to the beginning of June. Then I'll take a little mid-season break. I'll take a couple weeks off after my last race in June, and then I'll take a week off really, and then I'll start training again. And then I'll have a second season between August to maybe November. We'll see. And I'll probably put 4 races there. So I'll end up doing 7 to 9 races in total of just the
Yeah, I think you have
triathlons.
to, right? To get the points and
Yeah,
become even better,
because
right? So
I'm chasing points. I'm chasing experience still because there's still people that have like 50 races under their belt compared to my 5 maybe in half Ironman experience. But yeah, it's expensive. And then how are you going to fund it? When you decide that you want to go professionally, it's a bit different because you are looking at, okay, I need to be able to support and then fund all this stuff. And so the way I've done it is at first I had a good starting place where I have my own chiropractic and sports business, which I'd left the sport to go focus on, build it up. I thought that I was just going to go off with that and make triathlon just a hobby and maybe do it as a professional hobby, but I didn't really have any future plans in that area of the sport itself other than just to have fun and be as competitive as I could be working my full-time job. And I built my practice up to being really considerably full-time. I think I see patients in a way where it's like I'm spending 30 minutes to an hour with each patient. And I got to where I was seeing about 45 to 55 patients on average for a couple weeks in a row. And I was like, all right, I've made it. And everything was real steady. And then I also worked some events for the PTO, which is a triathlon company that now puts on these races called the T100. So I work their US based events. So last year when I was in Miami, I was working with some athletes. And then when I got done working with all the professional athletes there, where I wanted to stay and watch the race. So I met up with some old friends and some guys I had never met before that are still doing short course racing.
yeah,
But when I went and stayed with them at their Airbnb, I was like, I used to race these guys a long time ago. And
and did
now
it.
they're full-time athletes. They're making it work. And I used to beat these guys.
Yeah,
I was like, maybe I should have continued pursuing the sport. And so that really got me thinking like, man, when I go home, I don't really want to go back to full-time practice.
yeah,
I really think I would let myself down if I never took it seriously and tried to pursue triathlon. I think it'd be one of those things I look back on one day and say, oh man, what would have happened? I shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Yeah,
So
I like that.
I ended up talking to a guy named Greg Bennett, who's like a legendary triathlete. He was older when he made his Olympic team. So I think he was like 34 when he went to the Olympics. And I was like, okay, from his experience and his knowledge on the sport and seeing all these other athletes, which I'm sure he was a mentor to or has just been around and seeing how people become successful or don't, I was like, maybe I jump on a call with him. I had the opportunity to do that. And I said, let me get on a call with him, ask him about his
Too
experience
late.
and is
Stuff like
it too
that.
late? Should I maybe not really pursue it, keep it in the background and just do it as a hobby, what I originally thought? Or does he think, and based off of where I am right now, could I actually make it in the sport and do really well enough to make a living with it? And after that conversation, I think if you had came to me a year or two later, I might have not told you to pursue it. But you're in the perfect time. You still got a good 5 years. You can improve and build and
Yeah.
grow in long distance sport. And with the endurance sport, then you can ride it out for another 5, 6 years. So I'm looking at a 10 to 12 year career you can still have. Give it 3 good years. Go and invest as much as you can of your time and energy into it. Give it all you got for a couple years. And at the end of it, if it doesn't work out, you can always go back to practice. You can
Yeah.
find a way to get back to doing whatever you're doing now. The way I see it, you're already established. From a sponsor standpoint, you being a doctor and all these other little things, a coach and whatnot, that becomes valuable with sponsorships too, because it gives them some backing to whatever you're backing. And so he had an interesting perspective on that kind of things. And he was like, you can either set your practice up to be your sponsor to where you hire some people in and you completely step away, or you could still work it part-time and then just do part-time and try to build yourself up into the sport of triathlon too. So that's the route I took. I just started backing down my hours in the office to where now to do professional triathlon in the way that I'm pursuing it, I work part-time in my office. So I only do 3 half days a week in the office, and then I do coaching. I'm a master swim coach, and I coach at Texas Fort Aquatics and Lifetime Las Colinas. I do 2 practices a week at each of those places, and that brings in a little income. And then I coach triathletes and runners on the side as well. I've been doing that for 9 years, and so I think I work with 14 athletes right now, and that brings in some income. So that's what supports me right now is my part-time
I love it,
practice
man. That's
and
awesome.
coaching.
Well, you know, something I actually really that you did was you took the time to really just think it through, ask some really professional athletes that maybe did it for a while, but you already have a great background and you've got your schooling. You're already established if you want to be. And it's, look, you can always fall back. I don't know if that's
Right.
but you can just do that full time. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's cool to have those things. I think if I could go back and do it all over again, I maybe would change things a little bit. I think before I ever went to chiropractic school and I had that inkling that I wanted to pursue triathlon professionally, I think if I could have gone back and told, which my parents just pushed me into, keep going to school, go on. But from their time and age, that's like the best thing that they knew. They
Yep.
said, this is what you do. You get a job, you pay your bills, you start your family. This is going to set you up best for life. And they didn't fully support me doing triathlon because they had no athletic background. My family has no
There you
real
go.
athletic background. I'm the only one that kind of popped out of nowhere as some kind of a standout athlete in the family.
That's interesting.
But
Anyways, keep going.
I think I would go back and I would pursue triathlon from that point because at that point you don't have any student loan debt or anything. You have a clean slate. You don't
Yeah.
have a whole lot of responsibilities of any sort, and I could do just as much coaching then and build it up to what I'm doing now, I feel like. And I was already doing a little bit at the time. So I think I should have just said, hey, even if you took 10 grand to support you for a year or two, do that now.
You're a
Go
lot more
risk it there.
resilient when you're younger. You know,
And
like,
that's very true.
and like you said, you don't have any debts necessarily. If you look, there's a lot of paths you could have taken. You took this is the reality.
But yeah,
It
that's the
could
thing.
have, should have, but didn't. Like this is what it is. And
Yeah.
now you are established. So
Right.
that's good. You can see that as a very much of a positive to
Yeah.
me. And then now you can still chase your dream. And you still have, the guy said, 4 or 5 years to really do it, and probably 3 years to say, is this a reality? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Do I
Yeah.
continue this?
And so
And
I
you got
wouldn't
pretty good
say,
social presence, or at least your Instagram. I mean, you
yeah.
get a lot of views on that.
Yeah,
If
it's
you
been
use
going
that,
great.
if you use that as a kind of a tool to really, I don't know if you do TikTok or whatever, but look, social networking is for you is an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
All athletes like you.
My coach said that hey, I think you'll be one of the best in the world. It's going to take time to get there. But the good thing you have going for you is you're a personal person. You're very
Yeah.
likable. He said, a lot of people like to hear what you have to say. Even sometimes when I'm like, people don't want to know what power, what pace you're going, but people do. They're interested in that with athletes that are like you. So he's
Garrett,
encouraged me and
I
pushed me to
have a
share it.
podcast about
So
running, right?
yeah.
And so all we talk about is running most of the time. And luckily you wanted to come on. It's a little different. We'll talk about running here in a minute, but people are interested.
Yeah.
That's why,
So
and they're listening to these podcasts. So here
right.
you are.
Yeah, and I've been starting to pour a little bit more into social media. And recently, I like to joke around. I'm like, maybe this is the beginning of something because I've had my last 2 or 3 videos that are going crazy. And the only real secret that I took into it is I did some things that I thought were interesting and funny. And I hit on some things that I saw other people doing. And I posted like back-to-back days kind of thing. And for whatever reason, Instagram loved it. And right now, over the last week, I think I've gained almost 200 followers. And so I was like, wow, I'm just going to keep doing this because that's working good. And that's what sponsors want. And when we come back to what you were asking about
That's
how do
exactly
you
right.
get some support,
That's right.
a big thing is, and I'm not upset with how I went my whole pathway. I like what you said, I'm established now. I feel like I'm in a really good place to be doing what I'm doing, and I'm excited about it, which is one of the big
Yeah.
things that's really important. You need a
You have a
fire
clear
to keep you
vision.
going.
You have
And
a
yeah, the
vision now.
vision is
You know,
super
it's like,
important. And so I've been training really good. Everything supporting me is going really good. And how I've also tended to procure some sponsors is that I had one person who's an individual that he used to try to be a professional runner. He's known me through some swimming stuff. And he said, hey, I'm just going to individually back you a little bit. Here's a little bit of money. I'll support you for a couple years to get your feet on the ground. And once you don't need me, just let me know. But I'll help you get your feet on the ground and get going. So I've had the angel sponsor who's helped with some of the baseline expenses of things. And then outside of that, what's been funny is that one of the easiest things to get has been wetsuit and swim apparel gear and sponsorships. So I started out with that last year. I was a part of this big team, but then some of the things weren't as good as what it seemed to be or what the team was making it out to be. They had change of management in the team. The people who were in charge of taking care of our team had shifted, and then it just wasn't working out for me. So I left that, but I still have a lot of connections with good, like, wetsuit and swim apparel brand. So I'm still like fully supported with any goggles, swimsuits, wetsuit, things
does that
around
stuff
swimming
wear
that
out
I need.
fast? I
What's
mean,
that?
does that stuff wear out fast or?
It can. So the
Okay.
wetsuits, even though they're $1,000 for a wetsuit, those things
Exactly.
can only last you like 5 or 6 swims. Yeah, I have an athlete right now. He just
That's
bought a
crazy.
Roka top of the line wetsuit, and we were at the pool the other day, and he noticed there's 2 little rips in it, and he's like, "What?" He's like, "I've only worn this thing twice. How
Wow.
is it tearing up already?" They're very fragile. They can make you very fast, but you got to be super careful with them. You can just stretch
That's
it.
so
You can do
interesting.
a little stretch the wrong way and just get a little in it.
Wow.
So some of those things are, but
That's pretty crazy. So
yeah,
let's get some very interesting background. So I appreciate you coming on and telling me all this stuff, and I'm sure others are going to be interested that are thinking about either becoming a professional athlete or what it takes to become a professional athlete, or even just, hey, it's interesting that what you have to go through because it's not like you're just sponsored by this big
oh yeah,
company that's going to just give you all this money. You have to
right,
do a lot of different things. You have to work odds and end jobs. Luckily, like we mentioned, you're established, and so you have kind of a thing that you can still do on part time, and but you're still doing some bike stuff. You're still doing going to events and either
yeah,
volunteering or doing different things. So you're meeting people. I love the community aspect, something I always talk about that's important for you to be successful in any sport, whether you're just doing it for fun or just doing it for working out or whatever, or even at your level professionally. I'm sure you have a community that you're building relationships with, constantly trying to do those things. And I think that's a key to anything that you do in life is the community
right.
aspect. So
Yeah, I think that's what people seek is human connection, and especially in the things that we love to do.
that's right. You said it perfectly. We could end it there, but one of the things I wanted to talk about specifically is about running. So this is a podcast about runners generally. I just had some elite athletes on that just came out talking about their Boston experience and moving forward or whatever. You've run, I don't know what your best half marathon time is. I say 1:14, which is pretty good at Cowtown. Was that
Yeah. I did a 110, I think 110, 18 or 20
okay?
at the Irving Frost back in 2023.
Did you
And
win
that's my
it?
best time. I did win. Yeah.
Okay, I was about to
So,
say. Now, there's some really fast people. Like I was looking at the Dallas times, and they're running 107s for just There's some really fast athletes here in Dallas
Oh,
from a
yeah,
running
we've got a
standpoint.
great community of like all
That's fun.
around from the top, from kind of the elite area of athletes. We have a lot of really fast runners, and then we have just a good volume. I think the community has really been growing, especially lately. I watch it from afar sometimes. I've bounced in different groups, so I've been around like Train Pegasus group. I've been around like the Sloths group. I've been a big part of Nomad when it was when it was blowing and going, and I've been around like the Plano running community a little bit, and then the Oak Cliff. I was one of the first people to go to the Oak Cliff Run Club when there was maybe like 12 people out there, and now it's 400 or something crazy.
The running community is huge in DFW.
Yeah.
Dallas is big, but the whole entire Dallas Fort Worth. You think about what the Irving Frost guy, I forgot his name, but the race director there, he's created this whole
Oh yeah.
thing in Irving that's
Alonzo, I think.
Alonzo, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it Alonzo?
Or
I'm not sure.
something like that.
But yeah, he's done a great job there. And then you think of Dallas Marathon, Cowtown, and some others that are from a racing standpoint. What is your goal so have you run a marathon before or?
I've actually never run
Okay.
a marathon standalone. I've only done one marathon, and that was a part of an Ironman that I did. But I did that Ironman with my fiance, and that's the only Ironman that I've done.
Okay.
If you ever try to look me up to find my results, it'll say did not finish or did not start, one of the two, because I actually used back then when I did it, I used my pro license to enter the race late because it had already sold out for age groupers. And Ironman didn't like that. So they didn't
It
like that I
did.
didn't start with the pro men. They didn't like that I registered with my pro license to not race pro, which I didn't even know there was the rules around that back then. Like I said, at first when I was a pro, back when I was in school, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I
Interesting.
did that. So they gave me, I didn't finish it, but I did finish it. I did it with my fiance all at her pace. So I just had a whole day of fun
Is
training
she an
and running
athlete
and
too,
stuff.
or
Yes, she does. She's the long distance. So she really only does Ironman events and like half marathon events.
okay? So she's more of a so she does Ironman, but she also does more running. Is that right? Or
Yeah, I'd say she does. We do probably about the same amount of running events because I say I dabble in road racing and road running a little bit to build up my running and things like that
yeah,
sometimes at certain seasons of the year.
there's lots of races here, so why
Yeah,
not?
yeah, definitely. But she's the one, she's done 16 Ironmans. So she's a
Oh,
big,
geez.
very well-versed triathlete Ironman person. And then she's been chasing. So right now she's focused on the running. So she's chasing Boston, and she just qualified at Houston this past Houston marathon. And yeah, now she's going to do Boston next year. We were hoping that, pretty sure she got a really good time gap to be able to do that.
My wife, so we're going to Boston again. So it's going to be her 12th in a row,
Oh, wow.
Boston. And then she goes right to Boston to London because London's the next weekend. So you can imagine she's
My
not going to
goodness.
race that one, but
Yeah,
trying to get into London is very difficult
I hear.
and
Yeah.
also Tokyo. So yeah, look, Boston's awesome. It's amazing. So congratulations to your fiance.
Yeah, it'll be really cool. I'll go and
Yeah.
watch, I'm sure.
Say, like, I'll go. What's really cool is there's this 5K that they have Saturday before the marathon, and
Okay.
so you get to go through the finish line, and there's elite athletes out there running the 5K. So there's 10,000 runners, 5K,
Okay.
and these guys are running low 13s. The women are
Yeah.
14s, and so
Yeah.
there's pacing within the 5K, which is crazy.
Yeah, it
So
is wild seeing those really top end because I'll jump in a lot of like elite local type races and stuff. And I've done a couple that were like very competitive. I'm lining up against a bunch of like Kenyan athletes. And when you watch those guys run, you're right there with them and right behind them. You look at them and you're like, okay, they are running. I don't know what I'm doing or what I thought I was doing,
yeah,
but
exactly.
they're floating.
You could be doing 16s or things, and that's
Yeah.
nothing. You know what I
Oh,
mean? That's fast. I find that there's a lot of these Dallas runners that can run that fast. I'm gonna say 14s, but
yeah, good
fast.
bunch that can, I think. And there's some guys I train with. There's a guy I train with named Sergio, and he's run a 14:16 or something in the
Crazy.
5K. He's from Spain, and he's just crazy fast guy. I like to chase him around, but right now he's in a little bit less. He just got second at Dash Down Greenville, and
Who
so
got
he did
first?
really well. Craig did. He's another really good local athlete, Craig Lautenslager, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
I can call him
so,
up.
oh yeah, he's been around. I don't know if he lives in Dallas or I'm not sure where Craig lives, trains, and things like that, but Craig is a really good athlete. I've never really talked to him before, but I've seen him at a lot of races. And there's a race that's called I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but if you haven't, there's a race in Tyler, Texas called the Fresh 5K, and oh my gosh, that race is awesome. There's a 5K and a 10K. I don't know if there's a 10K, but there's also like fun run walk kind of things that are associated with this for kids and everybody else. And it's a huge race in a small town. I'm from that area, and they have prize money in the 5K for locals, for anyone who comes, for masters. There's prize money and gift cards for all of those categories. And then in the 5K, it's been really competitive. They used to pay to the top 10. So it used to be fun to go to that because you would
Yeah.
see everybody
You get
getting
top
off of
10.
the bus of elites, and it's okay, Kenyan,
No way.
Ethiopian. So there'd be like 6 to 8 of them, and you're like, okay, they
Can I get
first
ninth?
8 places are gone. We're like, there's ninth and 10th for like the local guys or like anyone else that's here to run elite. And so I used to try
That's
to
funny.
get into that prize money there, but now they've cut it down to the top 5. But it's still a super competitive race. But one of the best things about that race is their little expo of freebies is incredible. You can literally go home with groceries for a week because Brookshire's Brothers, which is the ones who are huge sponsors of the event, and they have a store there called Fresh where the race is at. And they basically just have all the vendors for the grocery store come out, and they just give away like free stuff like crazy, like full on macaroni and cheese boxes. You can walk out with a bunch of chopped brisket, like crazy stuff, a bunch of protein shakes. I think one year I left with 12 bottles of like protein shake stuff on top of all the other things that I had. They literally have like these big cardboard boxes that you pick up, and you just go around, you fill them all up, and you'll go home with huge boxes of stuff.
That's super cool.
It basically like covers whatever the entry fee is with all the free stuff that you end up getting.
Yeah, I might try it. It's only what, an hour and a half away from Dallas.
Yeah. You could
So
drive it
this
in the
is
morning. I've done it.
exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you have.
Yeah. Maybe something that'd be interesting for people to know about is how do you, with this being a heavily running podcast, is how do you structure your running training into all the other things you have to do as a triathlete? I think that's something that's interesting that's maybe a little bit different than what people might expect, because there are some people that still keep a higher running volume, but I think even to compare to what people do that are runners in the community, you've got people that probably typically would average somewhere over 50 miles a week in the DFW running community, but
A
I
lot
like
of them do, yeah.
rarely get above 40 miles in a week. And I still can run like a low 15-minute 5K, a 110 half. So I ran a 114 in Cowtown, but that was after I had taken some time off for the end of my year last year. I had 2 weeks of like base training, and then I got a 2 week long injury where I couldn't do anything. That was just one of those freak things. And then after I got back from that, I had about 3 to 4 weeks of training before doing Cowtown. So I did Cowtown and had a good time, but it was still like something that I
That's
think
still
at
four
this
minutes
point,
off your PR.
yeah, yeah,
114 is extremely fast for most of
it's
us.
very
But
fast.
for you, you're probably like, yeah, I assume you probably felt like it was good enough and you're probably
Yeah,
happy with it
for
because
the
of,
place I was at, I was happy with it. But I think I'm capable of maybe even running like a 107, 108, maybe at this point in time now. And this is only a couple weeks later, but I just with the training and where I'm at compared to 2023, I'm like, okay, I think I could really break down and go quite fast. Like I'm hoping to be able to run ones at the end of my half Ironmans
yeah.
and maybe even faster than that just this
Well,
past
I'll
week.
be watching, man, because this is so interesting.
It's fun. It's a cool
I'm not
game
a
board to play with.
half Ironman person, but I am always in awe of people that can do it, and especially at the elite level. I mean, that's a lot of training, work, time, and effort
It
to
is.
do. But it's cool that you get to do this as a profession for the most part, ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you
I'm working
actually
on it.
are. Yeah, you're working on it.
I'm working on it becoming more of a full time because, yeah, once I get like that social media following built up, and my goal is to do it in a good way, provide things that are interesting, and then start to connect with the people that are on there to say, hey, here's my journey, join me, follow along. Like, I'm not only trying to get money from sponsors, but also provide valuable things and even if that's entertainment or inspiration, something of
I'm
value to
inspired,
community.
man.
Yeah,
You're super smart. You've done some really cool things, and now you're chasing your dream, which is
work. Yeah.
in a very smart way at the age that you are. It's pretty cool to see, man. This has
Yeah.
been really
Thanks.
cool. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you coming on, Garrett. It's
Yeah. It's
great.
been great.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another DFW running podcast. And please don't forget to rate and review us and follow us we're on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Follow us all there. Until next time, thanks, everyone. And thanks, Garrett.
Bye.